But yeah, so journalists nowadays just are interested in talking at the people, and like you said, like game of whack-a-mole, trying to eliminate all those who prove them wrong or disagree with them. It's a really hilarious situation.
This gets to like the next part of what Quigley talks about in terms of what's the reaction to the instrument becoming an institution. There are three things that can happen. The first is he actually calls it reaction, where a new societal organization attempts to be created to challenge the old one and fails. The old one wins. That's called reaction. The second one is called reform, which is the organization itself. People are able to get into it and change it internally in order to do what it was supposed to do in the first place, or I guess also maybe what it did in the first place doesn't matter anymore because things have changed so much. Give it a new purpose and a new role that actually achieves something productive. The third option is called circumvention, which I already mentioned, is that something new is created that completely circumvents what the old institution is doing, and the old institution doesn't have the ability or has a fight and loses the ability to stop it. Now, Quigley says that between reform and circumvention is always easier. And in the examples of Western civilization going through its phases, each return to an age of expansion was always accomplished through circumvention, not through reform. Now, we're going to branch this back into the instrument of expansion, but still here talking about the media. I think this is a perfect case study of the fact that, particularly starting in, it really started like in 2010, but it became really noticeable after the election of 2016, this super internet clampdown, this banning of everybody happening everywhere, particularly leading up to the 2020 election, this banning of everybody everywhere, and attempting to stifle these other media. I think Gab is a perfect example. I'm not saying left, right, or center whether Gab's good or bad are going to be successful or not, but the attempts to stamp out Gab financially is, don't let them have a bank account. Don't let them get access to a credit card. No financial services whatsoever. Yeah. And we're going to demonize them in every corner of the media. They still were able to survive through cryptocurrency, which is what we're going to get into, right? Now look at all the other media outlets that are coming out. I guess Twitter actually got, in quotes, reformed. So great example of reform right there. But YouTube's going sideways. We've got BitChute, which is kind of not turning out that great. We got Odyssey, we got Rumble. Twitter was going sideways. We have Gab, all the and then the internet providers of the governments are going, we're going to still clamp down on them, and they go, we have VPNs. Now we have a decentralized network where you can't turn it off, right? So there's this tension happening, there's this battle happening, and it looks to me on this case particular on media, the circumvention's winning.
Absolutely, it's not
the circumvention's winning, man.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
in terms of the instrument of expansion itself, we've been talking about how the crypto.
Just to bring up one more. So with big tech, right? So big tech was this dynamic companies in the late 90s, early 2000s who invented new ways of doing things, of communicating, etc. And now they've just become institutions of oppression and suppression. One thing that just comes to mind, one hilarious example was after Trump won the presidency in 2016, the Alphabet Corporation, or Google, had a company-wide struggle session, a pity party, to talk about, oh my God, what are we going to do to never let this happen again? And they were talking about this, like that's a thing, like that's their job, to not.
Yeah, and it wasn't rhetorical. It's not like, oh,
Right.
what are we going to do?
No,
It's like, no,
like,
we need to do something so this
what
can
did
never
we-
happen
how did
again.
we
Yeah.
how did we let this thing that wasn't supposed to happen? How did we allow somebody we don't like to get elected into office? Incredible. Like the arrogance of these people is just one side of things, but this attitude of it was our job to not let this happen, and we failed. We're going to do everything we can to never let this happen again. This whole attitude is just, this is the one objective is we cannot let Trump win again, and all ends justify.
All ends justify the means. Yeah, right.
All ends justify the means that they took to get there at the end of the day, because they start censoring like crazy, adding their opinion, stupid little opinion notices everywhere. As soon as there's somebody talked about COVID or elections, they had to have the little call-outs down there with the links to. Here's the correct.
Remember,
opinion.
we're on YouTube. They were 100% true call.
Of course,
they were true corrections that should never be questioned because they're 100% objective and true.
Thanks, YouTube, for doing that.
Yes.
So anyway, a big tech and all this. So we're talking about institutionalization. I interrupted you. I don't know if you remember what you were.
Yeah. No. So we got to define the age of expansion that we were on right now, or excuse me, the instrument of expansion that we're on right now. So we came out of World War II. I'm talking about Western civilization. We came out of World War II with a new instrument of expansion, which the prior instrument of expansion, if I could say it quickly, was industrial capitalism, mass production of goods. And at the beginning, people made more money by producing as many goods as possible. And then things got too cheap. And then they said, well, we'll make more money by restricting the flow of goods. And there's the phase this goes through, which was industrial capitalism, financial capitalism, and monopoly capitalism.
Monopoly capitalism. Yeah,
right?
Industrial capitalism. It was just industrial capitalism. The companies' requirements to expand were so large that they needed the expertise of investment banks to pool large savings pools of money together and expand on a larger scale. And then for that reason, because the projects became larger, you needed the expertise of predicting which projects to build where and how profitable they're going to be. And this was investment banking. Also, by the way, the beginning of data capitalism, as I would call it, because that how do you predict how well a new expansion is going to do? You need data that you calculate future demand, whatever surveys this, blah, blah, blah. So that's why it turned into the power center shift from industry to finance, where now finance had all the power to deploy the large.
Because the banks wanted the boards in exchange for the loan.
Banks were also sitting on the boards there, so they started deciding where where capital gets deployed. Then that turned into monopoly capitalism. I forgot why exactly.
Yeah, because the companies got so big and their profits got so big, they could fund their own projects.
Exactly. So in turn again, right? So it's like this ping pong game. So came back these giant concerns that had been created by the investment banks became so profitable and were in such an advantageous position that they started building cartels. And then that was the era of the cartels, monopoly capitalism. And then that was basically the end of World War II. That's where we
it starts in World War I and kind of culminates in World War II, right?
Yeah.
So sorry, I'm trying to clear my throat here. Frog coming out, froggy. So
really?
We enter the post-World War II period, and then this is where Quigley leaves us, and we got to kind of figure it out ourselves. But essentially, it's less laissez-faire. That's kind of the dominating principle of the third age of expansion. This fourth age of expansion is dominated more by planning, where we've got these big blocks of industry. You've got heavy industry and light industry and labor and agriculture and all these different industries. And the government becomes the funding source for these different industries, and who could get the money in order to do whatever they wanted was how the production went. how anybody was able to produce. And the balancing factor was if any of these individual industries got too big, the other industries would group together to pull them back. That was the instrument. The institution, roughly from what me and Nima have been able to figure out, which is what we're living in right now, right, is that these industries have become so megalithlically huge, and that they data capitalism, like Nima said, they control so much data that they're the ones really calling the shots in terms of, okay, there's not all these industries competing like they were before. You've got the healthcare industry that controls all of healthcare, and then it controls the media in order to ensure that nobody can challenge what they're doing to really, really increase their profits. And then on the same side, we got Facebook, which controls Facebook, Twitter, this is before Elon Musk, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, which control disseminating information, but they all at the same time, they collect all your data. And so now we can listen to everything that you're saying. Right now, this phone's listening to what I'm saying, and it's going to create ads based on the topic of this conversation, because it's collecting all this data. So that there's this huge game of how do we collect all the data possible, so we know everything about everyone, and we can control what they buy, control what they think, control what they sell, put on a social credit score, or a social credit score rating system. Yeah, I mean, we're not there yet, but we all know that it's getting pushed in that direction. We need to have ESG. So what's that stand for again? Environmental, societal, and governance.
Environmental, social, and I believe G is governance.
Governance, right? We need to have ESG. We need to have diversity. We need to have all these things that have nothing to do with frickin' production, but everything to do with making sure that certain groups wield massive amounts of power over everybody else. Right?
Yes. And also,
that's where we're at right now.
I also I want to bring up data again, because I think data is used to blackmail a lot of people into doing things these days. And people tend to underestimate how much the world runs on blackmail. So, think of, you can have the wealthiest guy in the world with the most money power imaginable. Yeah. Whereas in like the 1920s, 30s, that guy could have unconditionally wielded a lot of power before the advent of the FBI, maybe, but even the FBI didn't have the data collection powers that they have today. So you can have like this super wealthy dude, but you somehow compromised him, got dirt on him through control of data. I mean, I'm just trying to illustrate how there's this new power leverage tool that has just swept in, that didn't exist to this extent back in the day.
It's even worse than that. We don't even need dirt. We could make it up.
Right, exactly.
Right? Because we control the media apparatus that you'll never get the truth.
So just to illustrate my point about data capitalism, also, if we just take a look at the largest corporations in America today, what kinds of companies are they? Largest company,
Amazon.
Amazon is up there. The largest company, Microsoft. Second largest, Apple, Nvidia, Amazon, Meta, Google. These are all big tech firms. They're the largest corporations of the country. So sometimes it doesn't even take much effort to figure out what kind of capitalism are we in today. Why are these companies so gigantic? Because data is the new resource that gives you the surplus that gives these companies a surplus that they need to sustain themselves, the surplus that they want to maintain as the institutions that they've ossified into now, right?
Right. And then does the general public get the benefit of that surplus?
The only two companies that aren't big tech in this top, I think this is top 10 list, Berkshire Hathaway, which owns a bunch of banks and insurance companies, basically, Eli Lilly, and that's it. Everything else is some kind of technology firm. And so now why is this whole AI push happening? Well, because these companies have gathered a ton of data, And AI is the next step after this, right? The data is the resource that they use to fuel the functioning of AI, right? I mean, does that ever occur to you? So now we've discussed before, the problems with centralized AI versus decentralized AI. We prefer like a decentralized AI that serves our needs, that improves our lives, that makes things easier for us, that is not used by people to dominate us. So, but just saying, like, this whole outgrowth of the data obsession is turned into the next phase, which is this whole AI paradigm that we're in now. So anyway, my point is just looking at the largest corporations, the countries are all big data or data-related firms.
They are, and then in terms of like the power that they wield. I mean, we just talked about, with the 2016 election, how do we make sure we never have this happen again? Well, what they did is they played whack-a-mole, banning everybody, right? Oh, someone spoke out against the medical wonders of the medical system, banned, right? And you spoke out about the wrong thing. We'll block you from the financial system. And I think that's supposed to be the biggest weapon coming up is the blocking from the financial system.
Yeah. Which, by the way, this method, this is what the journalists of the French Revolution who ended up succeeding, this is how they were treated in their time. There's constant surveillance, police raids, incarcerations. Many of these people went to jail multiple times, right? And a lot of it was for the stuff they'd said. So interesting to see that today's vigorous journalists are treated the way that the journalists of the French Revolution ended up succeeding were treated in their day.
If everybody who's watching this now or recording could like, share, and subscribe it helps us out a lot.
Yeah.
I hate saying it, but it's just true.